So welcome everybody to the Continuing Education Seminar Series, World Wildlife Fund Environment and Disaster Management Program. We're delighted that you're able to join us. Apologies for the change in schedule last week, but so pleased that many of you can join us today. We're fortunate to have Mr. Abdul Waheed join us and talk about Pakistan and his experiences with flood management in that country. Can we go to the next slide? So just for those of you who are not familiar with our program, Environment and Disaster Management is based in the Washington, D.C. office of World Wildlife Fund. This program has been up and running since 2005. And our goal is a simple one. It's to reduce risk and vulnerability for people and nature in a disaster management context. So we have three streams of work. One is our green recovery and reconstruction initiative, rebuilding post-disaster using environmentally responsible practices. We have an infrastructure-focused program that looks at infrastructure in a disaster context with a particular focus on building materials, including work that we're doing now on the global sand crisis. And then our third program is what we're here for today, and that's our natural and nature-based flood management program that started with a guidebook that we developed a number of years ago, and we've been doing trainings ever since around the world, mostly virtually during the pandemic, but now shifting to more in-person training. And so we are delighted to have a graduate of that training program, Mr. Abdul, who's going to share with us his experiences. And I will turn it over to Luz for some instructions on how to navigate this webinar. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Anita. So just to let you know that these seminar series, we are actually having them regularly, all around topics related to the Flood Green Guide and environment and disaster management as well. So if you receive the invitation for this one, you're probably already on our mailing list, and you will receive future invitations as well. We are always looking for people that would like to join as speakers or also recommend speakers as well as topics of interest. So please let us know. You can send us an email if you have any ideas. And then for this webinar, we will have at the end like a Q&A section. So please make sure either you enter your questions in the chat as we are going through the presentation, or you can also just raise your hand while we are doing the Q&A section. And I think that is it for this. We actually, before introducing Abdul, we did want to just have a little bit of a sense of who's in the room. So I will start a poll right now. And you should be able to see now. We would just like to know where you're located and then which sector do you work in, to have a sense of who's here. Okay, great. I see answers coming in. Okay, great. Thank you for answering. So I'm going to share the results now. So it looks like we have a good mix of geographical. I don't know if everyone can see the results now. Hopefully you're able to.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So yeah, we have people from every region, which is great, very exciting. And most of the people from Americas, which I guess makes sense with the time zone. And then in terms of sectors, it looks like a lot of people from disaster risk management, so that's exciting. But a few from environmental management, climate change, and water resources as well. If the people who answered other would like to put in the chat which sector do you work in, that would be great. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I'm gonna stop here. And Anita, do you want to introduce Abdul? Or...
Yeah, I think his bio is in the invitation, so I won't repeat that, but you can go back and review. But he participated in our Flood Green Guide training and has vast experience on disaster risk management and water management in Pakistan. There have been, as you all probably are aware, serious flooding issues over the years in Pakistan. And so I think his experiences both in the past and his thoughts about where this work is going in the future is quite relevant to the global context. So Abdul, appreciate you making the time to talk to us today. And yeah, looking forward to hearing your talk. Thank you.
Great. I'll move to your slides, Abdul. So please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. First, I would like to thank WWF EDM team for arranging this webinar on a very important topic, and also thanking the participant as well. So the topic of my presentation is integrated flood management for climate resilience with respect to Pakistan. And I put it in a dialogue or in a discussion so that we can have, because the complex nature of the floods in my country, because of the geography and the terrain of this country, this is a complex challenge. Like, we need to have a comprehensive solutions, scientific and local led solution. So there needs to be a lot of discussion to reach to a comprehensive natural and nature-based solution for flood management. So I will go through the presentation. Next, please. The sequence of my presentation will be, first I would talk about the climate impacts on Pakistan, and then Pakistan floods, the historical perspective and the economic impacts of these floods on the country, and then the recent 2022 floods which caused huge devastation in the country. And then I will talk about the challenges which we face in flood management, and then the strategies which government is advocating for and implementing for integrated flood management. And then in the last, I would talk about the flood management solutions as per the Flood Green Guide, the training which I got from WWF EDM. So this will be the sequence of the presentation. If I talk about the climate change impact on Pakistan, Pakistan is one of the amongst the top 10 countries most vulnerable to climate change, while our contribution to climate change is below 1%. So if we talk about the decade mean temperature trends, global versus Pakistan. So the mean temperature rise from if you go through the table, the mean temperature rise from after 1950, where Pakistan is twice as fast as the global mean temperature. And it is predicted that from 2010 to 2039, we will reach 1 degree centigrade as compared to the global mean temperature of 0.7 degrees centigrade. So this shows how we are being affected by climate change and what could be the consequences. Next, please. If we talk about the geography of the country, like we have glaciers in the upper Himalayas, which are melting at a very fast rates, which caused a lot of floodings, flash floods, and riverine floods almost on yearly basis. So these glaciers are blackening because of the heat absorptions and increase in melting. The melting of these glaciers are increasing. So the black carbon absorption of these glaciers are increasing. So ultimately these melting also increase, which cause flooding. Yeah. Next, please. Okay, I will talk about the historical start from 2010, where we have this huge flood. You can see the visuals, some of the visuals. There was a huge devastation to the economy and to the physical infrastructure, to the houses, to the human beings. Next, please. If we talk about the human losses from 2010, there were 1,985 human losses, and almost 20 million people were affected throughout the country, and 1.6 million houses were damaged, and 5.2 million acres of crops were damaged. The direct loss calculated was 10.06 billion US dollar. So there was huge impact on the economy of the country. Next, please. So what was the causes of, like one of the cause was because of the change in the weather pattern. Like we have seen that there is shift in the monsoon rainfall zone from the northeast to the northwest. This is almost 100 kilometers of shift. So this caused many of the districts of the country which were not earlier vulnerable are presently most vulnerable to the impact of floods. Next, please. So this is the shift of the monsoon in the last 10 years, which caused 25 districts most vulnerable. If we divide the country into different zones, like in the northern parts, where we have most mountainous regions, these are being hit by the monsoon zone. So that is more extremely vulnerable to the floods. And the central part, which is mostly plain and deserts areas, so they are also highly vulnerable. So because they are low-lying areas, and the people, the flood water went to the houses, to the agriculture land, and and the water remains there for many months. So they cause a lot of damages. And in the most southern east part, they are also vulnerable because the Indus River, we have this mighty Indus River which goes all along the country and drops down into the Arabian Sea. So there is also sea intrusion from the Arabian Sea, which cause the multiplying effect, which have a multiplying effect on floods. So but I will talk about the different types of flood in the next slides. Next, please. Okay, so this is the southern part of the country where we have this Arabian Sea. So the sea surface temperature between the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea, we compare it. So the Arabian Sea is showing higher sea surface temperature as compared to the Bay of Bengal since 2000. So this means that frequency of tropical storms in Arabian Seas are increasing, which have an impact on the southern part of the country. So we have big cities like Karachi, which are being flooded by this sea level, sea rise. Next. Okay. Then after 2010, we have this flooding between 2011 and 2015 as well, almost yearly basis, in which we also have huge devastations. Next, please. If we calculate the damages between 2011 to 15, we have almost 1,787 human casualties, and 18.12 million population were affected, and 1.85 million houses were damaged, and then 5.46 million acres of crops were damaged, and the total direct loss from these floods were 9.06 billion US dollar. Next, please. Okay, if you compare like from 1950 to 2015, we have direct losses from these floods were almost 38,053 million US dollar. And if we, divide it into two zones, like from 1950 to 2009, we have damages of 19,183 million in 60 years, while the remaining 50% of damages occurred only from 2010 to 2015. So this shows that in these 5 years, the damages were almost equal to the last 60 years damages. So this just shows how the frequency and intensity of the floods are increasing. Next, please. and that graph not include the 2022 flood, which I will talk it later. Pakistan floods, if we took in the economic impact of these floods, the average impact of disasters on economy was 1.2 to 1.8 billion, while it is forecasted because of the climate change and other anthropogenic factors. We expected that it will increase by 15.5 billion US dollars. The impact of disaster on GDP in percentage average was 0.5% to 0.8%, while it is forecasted that it will increase to 7%. And the impact on federal budget average was 3 to 4%, while it will increase to 40%. So this shows how the impact of these floods will increase in the coming years. Next, please. Okay, like there's not only the impact, but also there is uncertainty in climate impacts. Like before 2022 floods, we were expecting droughts in many parts of the country. Like if we look into the southern and western part of the country, we were expecting there was less than 1 millimeter of rainfall. So we were having droughts in many parts of the country, but suddenly there came floods. Next, please. So this is the condition of 2022 floods. The red and the blue shows that there was flooding very high, with very high impacts after a drought condition, and that was there was not predicted because we lack those predicted technologies and early warning systems. So we were the technology were in place for riverine floods, but suddenly we have these flash floods coming because of these monsoon shifts. So the impacts of these like there was the rainfall was 175% above normal than what was expected, and the damages were huge damages. Like there was almost 30 billion US dollar damages, and we lost 1,739 people, and almost 33 million people were affected, and 2.3 million houses were damaged, and we lost 1.2 million livestock. Next, please. So after their floods, the government conducted a detailed damage assessment, and then we identified sector-wise damages, losses, and the needs. So we divided these damages into 4 sectors: the social sector, infrastructure sector, productive sectors, cross-cutting sectors. So if we talk about the cumulative, the cumulative damages from this flood was 14,906 million US dollar, and the loss was $15,233 million. And our country needs 16,261 million US dollars. Next, please. So the government set some objectives for short, medium, longer term. Short for 1 year was shorter, for 1 to 3 years were medium, and for up till 7 to 8 years were longer term. So these are 4 objectives. One was to improve governance and capacity of the state, disaster risk reduction and resilience, environment and climate change. And then the second objective was to restore livelihood and economic opportunities, enhance economic opportunities. These were in the sectors of agriculture, food, livestock, and fisheries, and then commerce and industry, finance and markets, and also the tourism. And the third objective was to ensure inclusion and participation through social protection, cultural heritage, social sustainability, and inclusion. And the fourth was to restore basic services and infrastructure, like education, health, wash, community infrastructure, mutual services. So these are the four broader strategic objectives set by the government to come up with recovery and reconstruction of the 2022 flood damages. Next, please. And in order to achieve those objectives, there was some guiding principle or enablers which will be implemented by the government, different agencies. These objectives will be achieved through participatory, inclusive, and green recovery, pro-poor, pro-vulnerable, and gender-sensitive interventions, and coordination within different types of the government, and decentralization of the implementation process. And then investment in the nature-based solution and ecosystem-based adaptation measures. And of course, there are different, political and differences within the country, and ethnic and political differences, religious. So the intervention should be conflict sensitive. And also the institutional regulatory structure in place and prioritized. There was a emphasis on local material, knowledge, skills, and labor that will be promoted during these implementations, and avoid relocation, because relocation involves a lot of sensitivity and conflicts. So this was the focus to avoid reallocation in the future. And there should be balance between public and private sector recovery, so that private sector also groom and they can contribute, so that they can contribute and be strengthened for coming disasters. Next, please. After that disaster, the government have structure and the national flood protection plans in place now, and they are now in the process of approvals and different approvals, and that will be implemented in coming years. Those structure and non-structure measures include enforcement of river floodplains. Like we already have this River Floodplain Act, but the enforcement is a big question. So this was the understanding, to enforce in true letter and spirit. We also have National Master Plan on flood telemetry, but that will also be implemented in true spirit. And there was an understanding that there needs to be a regional flood forecasting center, and those should be connected with the relevant department. There should be strong networking within these regional and national and local level flood forecasting centers. And also the enhancement of the radar coverage. We already have some radar in place, but we have an understanding to improve the coverage, so that we can have flood early warning system in place, effective early warning system in place. And urban flood management, which is a big problem here because of the rapid urbanization. We are having this crucial issue, and the 20 most vulnerable cities are identified for flood management. And the capacity building and institutional strengthening is included now in the plans, and also the drainage master plans should be implemented and developed and implemented in different parts of the country, especially in the middle and the southern part of the country. Next, please. Okay. And there is also a realization that there should be nature-based solution for integrated flood risk management, and for hill, and flash coastal floods, there should be integrated flood risk management, and also an inclusive approach of community participation. There should be extended research on weather patterns, like I told that there is a shift in the weather patterns, and because of the impact of the climate change, we need to have extensive research on these weather patterns, so that we have an extensive flood management system. And of course, there is media campaign and awareness, political will, which is because of the political instability and economic crisis. We need to have this in place in order to have an effective flood management system. And operation management of of the infrastructures. And then we need to have the activation of loss and damage funds, because as per the Global Shield, Pakistan was identified one of the most affected country of the world. So there is realization in the world community that we need to allocate more funding to the country so that they can, recover from these crises. Next, please. So the challenges in implementing these flood management measures, which I perceive could be, next please. Like one of the big issues is the climate change. Like if we go through these graphs, the first graph on the left side, the upper left, shows the climate data. The climate, the temperature is increasing at a drastic rate in my country, and average temperature can rise even to 3 to 5 degrees centigrade, especially in northern part of the country by end of this century. And the second graph on the left, in the bottom left, this shows that the area average rainfall have interannual variability, and there could be a sharp rising peaks, which gives an indication of extreme precipitation event in the coming years. The graph on the right upper side shows that by year 2022, winter precipitation or snow at most part of the country shows decreasing trend with respect to average of previous year or the end of 2021. The graph below shows that by end of the century, global mean sea level may rise from 0.2 to 0.6 meter. While Pakistan's coast is part of South Asia, may rise to 0.7 meter. So this shows that we could expect more sea level intrusion and flooding in the coming years. Next, please. And also, beside climate change, there is also challenge of diverse nature of floods, like because of the geography of the country, we are having riverine floods, flash floods, glacier lake outburst floods, coastal floods, urban floods, so different types of floods. So each types of flood requires different type of strategies and solutions. So this is a big challenge our country faces. And this rapid urbanization, we have this urban flooding, very rapid, and have a huge consequences. Because we do not have the rainwater storage, we do not have waste disposal mechanism properly in place. There is no challenge of urban governance as well. So in urban flooding, we will face more challenges in coming years. And also we have this challenge of integrated flood management institutional planning, because most of the investment until now was focused on relief and recovery, while there should be more on resilience building and longer term reconstruction rehabilitation. And also we lack the capacity of and coordination within institutions, although we have systems and institution in place, but I think there is a lack of coordination and lack of capacity within the organizations, which jeopardize the flood management. Next, please. And also we have the lack the capacity of flood forecasting and early warning capabilities, like introduction of the modern technology to forecast, especially the flash flood and urban floods requires a lot of scientific knowledge. So this needs to be improved. Community awareness, education, and training needs, because the community are more dependent on flood response rather than flood management. So this needs to be done in extensive manner through different measures. And enforcement of existing policies and legislations. We already have policies and legislation in place, but enforcement in true letter and spirit requires a lot of consultation, a lot of discussions. And also the altered drainage infrastructure, because we are continuously developing infrastructure on the way of rivers and streams. So we are actually blocking the flow of the water, which cause disasters. And the water logging in some part of the country is low-lying areas. So there are often water accumulated, flood water accumulated there for months, which cause a lot of problems for the communities. Next, please. And of course, the integration of climate change, watershed approach in flood management is required, because until now, most of the intervention is site specific. So the intervention should be watershed management level and basin level, and there should be a proper comprehensive studies on that at different levels, and then intervention should be designed accordingly. And there should be hybrid approach of green infrastructure, which is a big challenge in my country, because there is more focus on gray infrastructure. There should be inclusion of green infrastructure as well. And the integration of different sectors, different departments, different organizations should work together to sort out and come to a comprehensive solution. Next, please. Okay, with regard to the flood green guide, some of the intervention which I'm proposing and which I try to implement in my work are, next please. Okay, in non-structure measures, enforcement of comprehensive legal framework, flood policy, forest law. There's building codes. These needs to be implemented, enforced. There should be floodplain zoning, and those should be implemented and enforced. There should be land use planning, and institutional capacity and coordination needs to be strengthened. There should be focus on flood forecasting and the early warning system. Both like integration of scientific and local-led knowledge, so that we can have a comprehensive forecast and early warning system in place. And of course, there should be preparedness, integrated flood management strategies in place, comprehensive understanding of the Indus Basin hydrology, because the Indus is one of the largest river in the world. It originates from Himalaya and goes all along the country, and drops down into Arabian Sea. So we need to study the whole Indus Basin, divide it into different parts, and then study it accordingly, because it goes from into the mountains, to the plains, to the deserts, deltas, so wetlands. So this needs to be comprehensively studied, and strategies should be defined accordingly. Next, please. In the structure measures, both hard and soft, there should be preservation of the wetlands. 4.8% of the country consists of wetlands, so they needs to be restored, because it's have multi-purpose. It can have disaster mitigation as well as livelihood improvement for the communities. There should be retention of ponds, mangroves, coral reefs along the coastline, plantations in different parts of the country. There should be flood and drainage improvement, infrastructure, and with proper maintenance, operation and maintenance. Because what I observed, that we have this intervention in place, but there is no proper mechanism of operation and maintenance. After 1 or 2 years, it got destroyed. And there should be improved forecasting, early warning system, preparedness, and integration of flood management strategy into development planning. Like what I said, that there is a development going on and it jeopardizes the flood management systems, because the infrastructure often block the flow of water. So there should be the development should be risk informed, and also there should be whole of the watershed basin approach. There are different techniques for cities like sponges and green belts should be introduced in cities, and of course hybrid approach of green and grain infrastructure should be included in systems and policies, so that we can have systems in place for flood management. Next, please. Thank you. This was very quick. If you have any question, you can.
Thank you, Abdul. That's wonderful. So informative, and you covered a lot in that very short time. So thank you very much. There are a few questions coming in through the chat, and I think some more will be coming. I know I have a lot, but I want to defer to our participants. So let me just share with you, Abdul, some of the questions that have come through, if you don't mind commenting on them. But firstly, I want to say, thank you for bringing up the issue of operations and monitoring, because as we talk about in our trainings, that is an area that is often neglected and can be so important, as you say, to ensuring the success of the methods. So I appreciate that you raised that, and that you're looking at that within Pakistan as well. Abdul, one of the participants asked if you could talk a little bit more about the River Floodplain Act and what does it include. For example, are nature-based solutions, floodplain restoration included in the River Floodplain Act?
Yeah, this is basically like the act included that like the people could not construct their houses, cannot intervene in the floodplains. So this is because not very focused on nature-based solution, but there's regulations that that you cannot intervene in the floodplains. You cannot construct, you cannot build agricultural lands within the river beds.
Okay. Thank you. Could you also talk a little bit about vulnerability? Because I was struck when you were talking about the 2010 floods, you had a slide with different vulnerability articulated within that watershed. Were you referring to vulnerability in terms of the flooding, in terms of the physical landscape, or were you referring to vulnerability of the people living in those areas?
Yeah, I think both, because the physical infrastructures are also of bad quality, like they were constructed not considering disaster management, flood management, and also the social vulnerability, because the people are living in the near the beds. The river beds are poor people. They often live within the river beds. So and also they do not have any social system in place. They do not have any voice. So I refer to both physical and social.
Okay, that makes sense. And then someone has asked, do you think that the increase in flood impacts in terms of the economic impacts, is that because of the vulnerability of the people and the physical infrastructure, or is it increasing number and scale of floods, or perhaps both?
Yeah, both, because but like the first one is more more relevant, because people who are intervening, constructing their houses, in the river beds, they are more affected. So there are no land use and system in place. So I think the anthropogenic factor is more although the floods, is increasing, but this human intervention is further exacerbating the flood impact.
Mhm, mhm. Okay. Can I also ask your opinion on a lot of what you call for and what the government is calling for is pretty common. We hear these necessary approaches elsewhere as well, but it's hard to prioritize and do everything at once. And some of these recommendations might be in conflict with each other. So for example, we want to do planning at a watershed level, but we're also promoting decentralization in terms of decision making. How do you see those different scales being addressed, and what sort of solution would you see for promoting both decentralization in terms of decision making, but needing to plan at a larger watershed or landscape scale?
I think you need to have this both approach. Like you need to study the watershed at watershed level, so that you can come up. You have a bird view of the whole system. Because sometimes you have intervention in place in one area, and there's have repercussion for other areas. Like you are basically causing disaster for other communities. So the study needs to be done at watershed level, and then you need to have sit with the communities and identify different measures, because they know their areas, they have this knowledge, traditional knowledge. So I think both these needs to be mixed, so that you can have some very comprehensive solution for flood management.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, and thank you. And a related question along those lines are, what type of local materials, knowledge, and skills, when you talk about recovery and reconstruction, is required in Pakistan?
Yeah, because like if we say about the flood protection walls, like the river's bed deposits some rocks which it bring along with it. So if those material being used, so the cost of the intervention could be reduced drastically. Similarly, some of the plants specific to the areas, like they have both they have dual purpose of not only mitigation but also some livelihood improvement. So that could be introduced. So I think that the local materials, local equipments, and local knowledge are very important for these flood management.
Okay, thank you. Abdul, there's a question here about, is there any direction or government investment in making social services such as health, education, more climate resilient?
Yeah, like now, like we already have some social systems in place to provide some relief for the most vulnerable, but that was not specific to climate change and disaster management. So because every government, when they came, they introduced their own social intervention so that they can get more benefits and votes for the upcoming elections. But their measures are often temporary and not considering climate change. But now there are some realization within the government and departments because of this international treaties, obligations, because of the impact of climate change. So there are now realization, and some of the international organizations are working on these sensitizations and education on making climate change mainstream into different projects and programs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. There's a question on community engagement and participatory approaches. what sorts of existing local structures exist to facilitate community engagement? And are there good examples of local engagement or involvement on other issues that we can learn from in the flood management context?
One of the good thing of Pakistan is that we have a very strong social system in place, strong family bonds. So I think they are very important, and their strengths could be utilized for flood management. And there are also a sense of help, of doing helps and facilitating others. So these are some of the strengths which could be utilized utilized by the organizations and the government, so that and so that they can be, they can be trained, and although some of the international NGOs and local NGOs have developed different community organizations in the most vulnerable part of the country. So those organizations are trained, strengthened, they're on emergency response and first aids and search and rescue. So, but that needs to be scaled up because only government can cover the whole country. Because we have this, the impact of flood is huge. The area is huge. So the vulnerability is very high. So but that needs to be scaled and replicated in different parts of the country.
Yeah. Well, and you'll recall that in our training we talk a lot about the need for real critical thinking around community engagement, and how historically water management and flood management has largely been the domain of engineers, and that's not always their strong suit. So getting more diversity in the approaches to engaging with communities, on this issue is something that I think we're all struggling with and trying to learn. So appreciate your experiences from Pakistan and maybe how we can learn from that. Abdul, there's a question about prioritization. And this question comes from Dr. Misaka on our team. Out of the many approaches and needs in terms of flood management, which ones do you think are most likely to be adopted in the near future by policymakers and decision makers? Do you have a sense of the prioritization in terms of policy and decision makers?
Yeah, like we have this experience of, for the last 60 years, we are constructing protection walls along the rivers, diverting it, but it didn't work. Like, it lost for some years, and then floods, and then it washed away. So now there are a realization within the government quarters that we need to have this nature-based solutions. We go for nature-based solution because it brings a lot of co-benefits with it. So I think our country is now moving towards nature-based solution for flood management, wetland restoration, and plantation and mangroves restoration. So this is a hot topic now in my country.
Okay, so that answers another question about what's the driving factor in Pakistan on natural flood management. And I think you just explained it's the observation that the hard engineering is not coping. I guess my other question to follow that up then would be, how is it being discussed and considered in the government, the time lag between the effectiveness of the nature-based solutions and the immediate needs? Is that being addressed or thought through? Because unlike a seawall or a levee that's going to work as soon as the engineering is done, it takes a little bit more time, right, for the nature-based approaches to be as functional as they're designed.
Because nature-based solution, this is not, it requires some time to be implemented. Like you do plantations, so they require some time to be effective. while flood protection is constructed within months. So like still there is not a lot of sensitization is required to shift from gray infrastructure to green infrastructure. So
yeah, so it takes time.
Yeah.
And do you see, in terms of that integration, do you see any successes of the different, for example, government departments that might have different mandates that now need to work together? How is that being facilitated and supported?
Yeah. Now, like there is realization within the government, like after this 2022 floods, like we were having, systems in place for river management, like, but in 2022, we have this unprecedented floods of flash floods. Almost 70% of the floods was flash flood. So there is a sudden paradigm shift in the government quarters, because flash floods coming from the mountains, from the hilly areas, you could not tackle it because the whole year there is dry, but suddenly within few hours you have intense rainfall and there huge flooding, and it washed away all which comes in their way. So there now realization within the government quarter, like these flood protection will not work for flash floods, because the intensity and frequency is very, very high. And your $1 billion rupees of $1 million in infrastructure wall will not protect the community, because it will be washed away. So now the government is realizing that green infrastructure, like nature-based solutions, could be more effective way of tackling this issue. But of course, it will require some time to be truly implemented, and and in also different quarters of the government. Like we have at national level, we have flood forecast, Federal Flood Commission, we have National Disaster Management Authority, we have at provincial level, we have Provincial Disaster Management Authority. So still there is a lot of needs, and training and capacity building needs to be done at different levels.
Great, definitely agree. It's complex, and yes, there are co-benefits, and all of this needs to be addressed. And it's a challenge because of the need to prioritize and the limited funding, et cetera. But we're certainly very supportive of capacity building and institutional strengthening. And along those lines, we are developing a new program for this flood initiative that's focused on youth and youth engagement. And we've had a question about how do you perceive, Abdul, within Pakistan, the participation of youth and young professionals in tackling this challenge?
Yeah, definitely. Because it's an emerging science, and people are, like young people are even enthusiastic to build their career in this field, and and also to tackle this issue, which have a huge impact on the country. So definitely the youth will have very much interested to participate in such types of trainings and learn from international experiences.
Mm-hmm. Are there institutionals, education facilities, vocational training within Pakistan that will support building skills in this space?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Some of the institutions here are doing degrees in disaster management and climate change. So they have from different disciplines, and so they will be very much interested to pursue it. And also the departments, the disaster management departments will be very much interested to learn these new techniques and implement it in their work.
Okay. I know we're coming up on time and people might need to hop off at the top of the hour. Just to remind everyone that for those who joined a bit later, there will be a recording available of this session, so you can go back. If Abdul is willing, we'll make his contact information available if anyone wants to follow up with him specifically with more detailed questions or comments. But before people have to leave, I do want to say also thank you so much to Abdul for making the time and for all the hard work that went into this session. And we know you faced a few challenges in getting here today. So thank you for making that effort. And to Luz and the EDM team, Luz has been the leader of this continuing education initiative, and she's doing a great job. There's a lot of work behind the scenes that goes on. So thank you, Luz, and to the rest of the team for your support. I think if we have one more minute, I will sneak in just one last question, because there was a question about going back to the youth again. If you had to suggest, Abdul, in terms of flood management, what part of flood management do you think the youth of the country should focus on? Would it be the engagement process, awareness raising, monitoring? What do you think could be a priority?
I think first thing is to have an understanding of the risk assessment.
Okay.
Like not a micro scale, but at macro scale, at watershed level. And then coming up for different solutions, sustainable and resilient solutions. So that will be very much interested. The people will be very much interested. Come up with sustainable solutions, resilient solutions for flood management.
Okay, folks, you heard it here. Young people, sharpen your skills on risk assessment and developing nature-based and sustainable solutions. And we're happy to support in that process. Please visit the website for more information on the Flood Youth Program. Feel free to share this with your friends and colleagues and sign up to the mailing list if you wish. And we look forward to seeing everyone at the next continuing education session. And thank you all. Have a great day. Thank you, Abdul.
Thank you, everyone. That was wonderful.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Thanks, Abdul.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.